As governors across the nation move to enforce lockdowns here in the US, there appears to be a growing groundswell by county sheriffs across the country to enact lockdown laws. Riverside County Sheriff Bianco is one sheriff that has come out publicly and expressed his refusal to enforce Governor Gov Newsom's lockdown request. Many Californians view Sheriff Bianco as a hero. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Now, was there at any time a conversation by sheriffs across the state in relation to towing the line for Governor Newsom's lockdown mandate?
I wouldn't say there was an official conversation. We have conversations normally throughout the year, group conferences or conference calls, things like that. So there has been discussions way back into March when the first ones were occurring, and I can't say universal, but for the most part, all of the sheriffs were on board. Most, if not all, of the police chiefs throughout the state are in the same position in that we would not use law enforcement resources to enforce the mandate.
So why are sheriffs refusing to enact the governor's orders?
You know, I think there's a combination of a lot of things, and I guess it depends on which one you ask, which sheriff you ask. There are some that are saying they're not going to do it on constitutional grounds. There are some that are saying that it's a personnel issue, that they don't have the time or the money. I think for me, I think it was a combination of every reason that anyone could have. From the very beginning, it's not that I believe this is a real virus. I believe this is a serious virus, especially if you have underlying health issues. But I don't believe that it is as serious as what the media wants us to believe. It is not a death wish. When you get it, you're not going to die. And it seems like that's what they want everyone to believe. And the numbers from the very beginning were very, very exaggerated of the number of illnesses, the number of deaths that we were going to have. And when that didn't happen, it was obvious that either they were wrong or they didn't know, and to use law enforcement as the arm of enforcing these lockdowns or mask mandates, things like that, it just didn't make sense, especially when we have our regular job to do. We still 24/7 have to go out and fight crime and arrest real criminals and protect people from people that are doing them harm. This just was not the role of law enforcement.
Now, mainstream media, and particularly the LA Times, have called you a conspiracy theorist based on the fact that in the video that you released, you made an observational statement that the scientific and medical community are split over, I guess, the sheer magnitude of this virus and treatment. Are you a conspiracy theorist?
I actually think that statement is a joke, and anyone that says that, I'm not calling anyone names, but you're certainly misinformed, you're uninformed, and if you're a reporter doing that, you're a horrible reporter, because you're certainly you're fixating on whatever it is you want to hear, and that's it. In the medical community, what I stated was an absolute fact. If you ask 50 doctors, you're going to get 25 different responses, and maybe even more than that. I have friends and acquaintances that are doctors and nurses, and they've told me both sides of the spectrum. Some think it's this horrible virus that is this big bad thing, and others think that it is not. And they believe that it is exaggerated, and the fear factor and everything else. So to say that the medical community is not split, you are seriously misinformed if that is your opinion, because they are. All you have to do is look, rather than your one little specific news source. I certainly am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a law enforcement officer that I deal in fact. I don't deal in emotion. I deal in things I can prove. I deal in things that are real. And some things are, in law enforcement, you deal with statements, you deal with misstatements. We don't like dishonest people in law enforcement. And when you tell different stories, that means you're hiding something. And so as a law enforcement officer who I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and, a little bit of common sense tells you that there are two different sides to this. And if you just look at factual numbers, they tell you the science, the science, the science, but no one's showing us any science. They just tell you like you're supposed to know it, and then you're supposed to agree with them. In our county, we have 2.5 million people in our county, and right now we have about 150 people in intensive care for COVID. That's a minuscule amount compared to 2.5 million people, but they act like you're going to die as soon as you get it. And I think it's scaring people into believing that it's going to be worse when they get it.
And do you still have bed availability? Because that seems to be one of the big arguments being made by politicians and in the media, that we are going to run out of ICU beds here in the US.
Well, that's a very interesting statement. Now, official ICU beds, I think I saw a report yesterday, or it might have been this morning, that Riverside County is at 100% capacity in ICU beds. Now, that brings up a completely new topic, because in March, we were all talking about this, that no matter how bad it was in the spring, we knew it was going to come back in November, December, January. So for our politicians, for our governor, if he really truly cared about people dying in the hospital and the hospitals being overwhelmed, why was there nothing done in 9 months to increase the amount of ICU beds? We have the same amount of ICU beds now as we had back then. I think our local hospital, our county hospital, did add some more anticipating this, but there certainly was not a state effort or a unified effort for everyone to increase the amount of ICU beds. And even the numbers that we are reported to have, that's not even true, because they only report the number of licensed ICU beds. So that's the number of beds that the state knew we had in January. So even if we added 300 new ICU beds, the state wouldn't count that in our metrics, because that's not what it started with in January. So it is not, to me, as an outsider looking at this big thing where they want me to go in and physically enforce this. When I look at the numbers, when I look at the effort of the state, that they say something that is different than what they actually do, I just can't do it. It's to vilify the police and make law enforcement this muscly arm of the government for this, when it doesn't make sense to really a lot of people. All of that wrapped into one is really why I couldn't do this.
Now, moving on to crime, which is actually your job to deal with. In Australia, during lockdowns, there was a very large decrease in a lot of crimes, but then there was an increase in things like domestic violence. Have you seen similar patterns, or where are the crime statistics for you in Riverside County?
I think we were all shocked in the very beginning that crime really did go down. And I think a lot of it is because for the most part, crimes are of a property crime. And with everyone home in March and early April, when everyone was really completely afraid of this and businesses were just complete shutdown, Southern California, something is wrong when there's no traffic. And for a long period of time here, there were no cars on the freeway. So that meant people were home. That obviously decreases the opportunity for someone to burglarize houses or to steal cars, because people are home, people are paying attention. So we did see a drastic decrease in crime in the beginning, but that slowly picked back up to normal. The domestic violence crimes were definitely increasing. Crimes against children, sexual crimes were, those seriously went down. But we are attributing that to the primary reporting person of those crimes are teachers. And teachers don't have an interaction with students anymore. So they aren't being able to report it. So those crimes are gone down. But and gang shootings, we've had a lot of gang activity, a lot of homicides. So in the beginning, it may have slowed way down, but we're back to normal now. And now we're seeing a lot of domestic violence. We're unfortunately seeing a lot of suicide. one school district in our area, and it's not one of the major districts, has reported 11 kids committing suicide this year, which is just astronomical. And if we're caring about lives, those are 11 lives that we should have cared about, and no one even talks about them.
It just makes your blood run cold when you think that a child is in such a dark place that this is what they're doing. And I am sorry to your officers that are going out there and having to deal with that, because I can only imagine how traumatic that is, no matter how seasoned you are in the field. Now, do you feel that you have the support of the Riverside people for the stance that you've taken?
Well, obviously you can't please everyone. There's always going to be someone. I mean, I could, it doesn't matter what you do, someone's going to find fault in it. But predominantly here, the support is overwhelming. The negative press or the negative groups seem to be small, and they're the same people. So, we got a lot of supporting calls to our dispatch center, to our sheriff's administrative center, and they've been keeping track of the positive ones compared to the negative ones, and it's about 10%. 10% are negative. So to me, that's overwhelming majority of our residents are believing what I'm saying, and they're thanking me for giving them a voice, because they all believe that I'm speaking for the majority, and I just happen to have a platform where someone was going to listen.
Now, one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of people outside of the US have is Donald Trump is wearing a lot of the blame for everything that's happening across the country in regard to COVID. But what I learned when I moved here is that the states have a lot of power and really take care of their own. The president does have a certain amount of power, but in regards to COVID, it is a state-by-state sort of case in how it's being dealt with. The red states tend to be a lot more open and people are free to move around, obviously with guidelines in regards to masks and social distancing, while the blue states tend to be locking everybody right down. Is COVID smart enough to determine which is a blue state and a red state?
Mm-hmm. No, that's not true. That's another one of the misconceptions, or maybe not a misconception, it's just a non-reported fact, is no one wants to tell you what everyone else is doing, and that the statistics are relatively the same. Whether the states are locking down or whether they're not locking down, the statistics are all the same. The fact is, it's a virus, and you're going to get it. That's what viruses do, is spread. And this has never been about stopping the virus or getting rid of the virus. This is, they've told us from the very beginning, they change their words every now and then, but it's about lengthening the curve, spreading the curve, flattening the curve, and drawing it out. Well, they've drawn it out for 9 months. And they said basically it was they didn't want to overwhelm hospitals. Well, somehow that's turned into the only reason the virus is out there is because people aren't wearing masks, and they're not social distancing, and they're not locking in their houses. And that is simply not true. It is simply not true. You can't go around here. This is a very populous county, and you cannot go around to any type of business, whether it's a hardware store or a restaurant, without serious social distancing, mask requirements. Everyone's wearing masks. Once in a while, you see someone that doesn't have a mask, and they look out of place. But the media and the press, they want you to believe that it's, everybody's just running amok here, and no one's wearing masks, and everyone's having parties, and that's why the virus is spreading and people are sick. It's not the case. And, if it were real, if we were getting real information, back to the cop information, where we just deal in facts and we deal in not emotion, we just deal in the things that we see, it's very, you can identify the people that are going to have a hard time with the virus. They're severely overweight, diabetes, heart conditions, those type of pre-existing conditions that make this worse. If it was really about health, and the state really cared about their health, they would have identified those persons, and they would have targeted those persons and educated them to stay home. Because if you stay in your house, you will not get it. I have family and I have friends that haven't left their house since March, and they haven't got the virus, and they probably won't get the virus, and they have friends and family taking care of them, delivering them goods and food, and they know that if they get it, they're going to have a problem with it. So here's something that's missing: a little bit of personal accountability and a little bit of personal responsibility, and they're staying away from people. That's how you avoid getting it. If you're going to go out into public, whether you have a mask on or whether you don't, you're running the chance of getting that virus. And if you don't have an immune system that's going to help you, you probably should be worried.
Now, just to finish up, your video statement that you released was quite strongly worded. Have you had a response from Governor Newsom's office or him personally?
No. Our state sheriff's association, we have 58 counties in the state, so we have 58 sheriffs. We have a president and a board that represents us for any type of political anything, any type of interaction with the state or things like that. And historically, the president of our association has always had a good relationship with our governors. That is not the case with this governor. He does not speak to anyone from our organization. He will have someone else that sometimes it's a staffer, sometimes it may be chief of staff, but usually it's a staffer. And we voice our concerns, and we know it falls on deaf ears, and he won't have a conversation with us. After this video, he did reach out finally after 2 years of being in office. He did call our president and ask to speak with him and develop a relationship and work through our issues. But that's it. I mean, he was told if he has a problem with me, he should probably reach out to me. I'm very accessible, and he has not. There has not been anyone from the governor's office that has done that.
We really are in extraordinary times, and I can't think of a time where we were ever dealing with issues just right across the board like this. Sheriff Bianco, I know you have a very, very busy and very long day. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us at The Informer.
Of course. Thank you for having me.